Thank you for coming to NEPA BlogCon through Blogging 101. My name is Dale Culp. I work for a small company called NEPA Geeks up in Mountaintop. So I'm the PR guy. I kind of, I blog for them. I put a lot of information on their website. I've also been a blogger for 10 years. I wrote for The Weekender, so I'm kind of a freelance journalist slash blogger slash, everything that goes along with that. So you'd think that kind of qualifies me to know what I'm talking about. Today we're going to talk about domain names. Basically, your blog and you, and how your domain name affects that. Just get my notes out and we'll begin. First question is, what's a domain name? All right, what is a domain name? Basically, a domain name is a unique series of numbers and letters used to identify an object attached to the internet. Oh my God, what does that mean? Basically, your website sits on a computer that is attached to the internet, and that internet, that machine has a number called an IP address. And whenever somebody types in www.yourblog.com, it hits another server called a DNS server, which maintains a big long list of all those numbers and says, this name goes to this number, and it pulls that information and heads it to your browser. So why is that important? It's important because if it's a really long name, then it's difficult to remember. So who wants to remember a bunch of numbers when they can just remember a name, right? Makes sense. The next question. Let's go on. Everything I just said. You can use any word or phrase to be your address, and there are some pretty obscene words and phrases that you can use, but that's up to you. So, what is a top-level domain? All right, aren't all names just kind of basically the same? Not really. Basically, you're talking about your domain extension for example, like .com, .net, things like that. .org, .uk, .co, .uk, .us, .mil, .gov. All of those are top-level domains. Does it matter which one you use? For example, can I use any top-level domain? Well, a long time ago when we started setting these things up, we thought .com would be perfect for a commercial website. You're selling products or you're a corporation, so basically commercial.com, that makes sense. .org, primarily for nonprofit organizations. .net is primarily for network services, such as ISPs. Well, then we had .biz, and then we kind of went crazy, and we started adding all kinds of other domains in, and it's the Wild West out there. You can use .com, you can use .net, you can use .org, you can use whatever you want. There's not a whole lot of restrictions, but there are some restrictions. For example, .gov, you have to be a government organization. .mil, you're going to have to be a military organization. There's a few others out there. For example, country codes. Generally, if you want to use a country code, you have to be a citizen of that country. Some of them are a little more relaxed. For example, .tv, I think that's for Tuvalu. That's a little island country out in the middle of the Pacific. And so basically, they leased the right to use the .tv top-level domain extension. And almost anyone could apply for that. And then there's other specific use TLDs, like for example, they wanted to use .xxx for porn sites. So let's look at an example of .com versus .org. As I said before, whether you're going to be using a commercial or a non-profit organization. So we've got WordPress.com. If you go to WordPress.com, and a lot of people probably set up their free blogs on WordPress.com. They are a commercial enterprise. What they want to do is they want to sell you services. They want to sell you, the blog is free, but if you want to use a custom domain name, they're going to charge a little extra. If you want to use more space or more, for images, things like that, if you want to expand your blog beyond what a free blog is, they're going to charge you for it. That's .com. WordPress.org, on the other hand, they distribute that software for free. So if you buy server space and you want to set up your own WordPress blog, .org is the nonprofit organization. They sell it. Their product is free as in beer and free as in freedom. You can change it, you can modify it, you can turn it into anything you want, you can't resell it. So that's the good example of, a .com versus a .org. How does that apply to you? If you're a blogger who is primarily trying to make money, if you're selling subscriptions or books or things like that, you would probably want to go with .com because, hey, I'm a commercial organization. Versus somebody who's just, trying to represent an organization or not trying to sell things, you'd think, well, okay, maybe .org is a better fit. It turns out, as I said earlier, it's a Wild West. You can have whatever you want. So the question is, you can have whatever you want. Do you really need a domain name? Well, the short answer is, yeah, you kind of do. Why do you need a domain name? Well, let's look at, for example, your domain name is your identity, right? My domain name, daleculp.com. It's my name. So naturally, I'm going to use my name as my domain name. That's how people are going to know me. But it's kind of a yes or no thing because yes, you do need a domain name, but at the same time, you kind of don't. I mean, let's look at, for example, one of my favorite blogs is bikesnobnyc.blogspot.com. That sounds like a mouthful, and it is. But the guy never registered like bikesnob.com or bikesnobnyc.com. He continues to use that free domain that came with that free blog. That's his thing. That's what he wants to do. That's how everyone knows him. That's his identity. And for example, let's say you are fashion chick or gamer girl or something like that. So you've got, it's a little bit of branding, it's a little bit of identity. People kind of know who you are by your domain name, and they know what to expect by your domain name. And that's, your domain name is your brand. Basically, if you're trying to talk about clothes or fashion, you're going to want to use a domain name that relates to that, because then people understand that. You're not going to go to Fashion Chick to learn about business law in Arizona. So let's move on here. Your domain name is how people find you. How much easier is it to tell someone, hey, just look up my name. Just Google daleculp.com. Or not even daleculp.com, just Google Dale Culp. You'll find my Facebook profile, you'll find my Twitter feed, you'll find my blog, my other blog. How much easier is that than, for example, saying go to www.myblog.com/user/15956/index.html. That's pretty complicated. It's a lot easier at daleculp.com. In most browsers, you just type Dale Culp, it'll take you right there. So that's how people find you. And again, if you're looking for someone who is into gaming or into technology or into, whatever weirdo niche that they like to fulfill, like sweaters for dogs or something, you're probably going to go to a website that says sweatersfordogs.com as opposed to NYC nightlife. Finally, your domain name gives you portability. Now this is important, okay? If you take nothing else from my presentation here, this one's the big one. This year, Google shut down their very popular RSS reader. They shut down RSS. They had Google Reader, okay? Really popular, a lot of people used it, and they decided we're just not going to use it anymore. Well, it turns out Google also owns Blogger, or blogspot.com. So that's your free website. You've been using that for your blog for a couple of years now. Google comes along and they say, well, no one's really using it, we're going to shut it down. Well, what are you going to do, right? You need to take all of your content, you need to find some other provider, and you need to set up your blog somewhere else now. The problem is, everybody knows you as yourname.blogspot.com. That's not going to work anymore. So if they want to find your blog, they're not going to find it. They're going to find a 404 that says this service was shut down, sorry. If you'd set up your own domain name, you could have moved your blog anywhere else. You could have bought free web server space, or you could have gone with a host that would have hosted your website, set up your domain name through them. And if they shut down, hey, that's okay because your domain still goes to wherever you point it. So like I said, if they ever decide that they're just going to kill that, or if WordPress decides we don't want to do free blogs anymore, you're going to be, really in trouble unless you get all of your stuff and start right now rebranding everything so that your business cards, your emails, your stationery, all of that points to the domain instead of this long gobbledygook of information that, is just a lot. So let's look at how to register a domain, which is pretty simple. It used to be pretty expensive, and you used to be able to go through like one or two organizations. I tried finding information on this. I can't remember. I just know from back in the day it used to be somewhere around $50 to $100. It was pretty expensive. Now it's like $11.99 if you buy hosting service from GoDaddy or whatever. So they're pretty cheap. GoDaddy.com, name.com. Disclosure, I work for NEPAgeeks.com. We will also register domain names for you. You just go to the website, look up web hosting. Like I said, domains can range in price. Most registrars today, they charge less than $20. And again, some will even give you a free domain if you buy web hosting through them. We're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of about $4.99 a month for the web hosting, about $11 for the domain name. That years ago it used to be a lot of money. These days it's pretty affordable. So why not, right? So hopefully by now you've decided I need to get a domain name and I need to set up my own web host. Shut up and take my money, right? And that's about all for this portion of the presentation. This is just a brief primer on how to set up, why you should get a domain name, why you should consider it. And again, because it's your brand, it's your identity, it's easier to find you, it's portable, you can take it with you, you can set up your blog any other platform. You don't have to rely on the free guys to always, be there for you, because one day they might not be there for you. And then I'm going to turn it over to John Knepper, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about marketing and branding.
Hello. Okay, cool. Just wait a second while I pull my slides here. Cool. So it's really important, obviously, to get your domain and to secure all that sort of stuff. But one of the things that isn't included a lot of times in blogging 101 is outreach and marketing and getting yourself noticed. Oh, fire. Sure.
It might be not on.
Well, that's embarrassing. Should have been talking into this thing. Ta-da! All right, cool. Much better. Surprise. Okay, cool. So obviously one of the things, like I mentioned, is when it comes to outreach, it's usually not considered in blogging 101, but the web's a really competitive place. So if you can't get yourself in front of other people's eyes, it's just as good as really not being there. This is my slide deck, as well as a bunch of different resources, URLs, tools, cool tips and tricks, all that kind of jazz is sitting at dudeWithTheHair.com/NEPA blog. So a little bit about myself. Jonathon Knepper, if you can't tell, I have big hair, and I'm a digital strategist. I work with companies, small and large, to help them online, to mostly web PR type of work or search engine optimization, a whole ton of different stuff. So one of the things that's really important, what my presentation is going to be about, is doing outreach. It has a lot of different names and applications. People refer to it as web PR. It falls under SEO or offsite link building. There are a lot of different ways that this gets sliced. It really doesn't matter what you call it. What it comes down to is connecting with people, being relevant, and providing value to audiences, to publishers, and those people who are going to get your message out there and across for you. One of the things this is not going to be about is this isn't going to be a bunch of like scammy garbage or any kind of like super get-rich-quick kind of stuff, because it's not going to happen. This is really about creating lifelong, blog-long, product-long relationships with people who can help you get your message across, and it's a mutual give-and-take of value. And I thought the best way to do this would be to use a real-life example. So real-life that I use Legos. So this is Annie right there, and I'm not sure if you can tell or see from where you're at, but she's a photographer, hence my little camera. Cool. And she really takes awesome photos, which is great. Everyone has their niche and what they're into, and that's Annie's. She has a blog, looks sweet, real cool. She's even on social too. She tweets and gets it out there. Now, the one problem, and what really stinks for Annie, is nobody knows. And that's a problem that a lot of people have. And a lot of the initial advice you'll hear most of the time is, it goes along the lines of use social, jump on social, tweet about it, or use a hashtag, and more people will find it. Really, everything's really competitive, and there's just a lot of noise out there that it's not that easy to stand out. One of the best ways to stand out to get mind share, not just referral traffic or links or social mentions, but real mind share, is to put yourself in front of audiences that have, put yourself in front of an audience, put yourself with and in front of people who have good influence and good authority, and that's the way that they're going to pass you on. Think of how much more impact it has thinking about a review versus just reading the product description on an Amazon product. There's a lot, it's a lot different. Again, nobody knows. Womp, womp, womp. We've all seen this in analytics before where there's just not much jiving. A couple little peaks that peak out at a 2 spot, it's just not enough. So, and I was wrong. There is one person who knows. It's Annie's mom. And she tweets about it. It's so great. She loves it. And she's such a good photographer too, and her mom knows. So now that we've got in a few minutes and I really didn't tell you much about what outreach is, maybe it's probably a good time to do that. So if you want to put some kind of definition on it, like I mentioned, it comes across a lot of different things, into a lot of different areas, but really it's about matching your message, what it is you're doing with a group of people or an organization, the general public, to really get yourself out there. And some of the things that outreach can obviously accomplish. The first one, which is pretty obvious, is brand awareness and influence. By doing this, you can grow brand awareness, and also you can get more influence. Who would have thought? So the one thing that is really important that a lot of people really forget to think about is the real relationships that you're forming. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, where it isn't just this one and done, or this kind of like crash and burn kind of project, where you're really creating a relationship with people, and it's a mutual exchange of value. And that's what's going to help your blog, help your project, help future projects succeed, because you're creating these relationships, not only with potential, with readers and people who are interested in whatever you're about, but also with authoritative people in a space or in your space. Referral traffic, that comes in the form of both social media, but also in site-to-site referral traffic. So think a really easy example is if you were published on a Huffington Post, they dropped a link to your site, then obviously you'd be seeing some kind of referral traffic from Huffington Post, or at least you hope. The fourth point there is social proof, which is really important. Again, I kind of touched on it a little bit before, but when you think about reviews, when you think about what the crowd is saying about something, it's very influential. Not only can that affect things like your conversion rate for your website, if you're getting more people to either opt in or to make it a purchase, but it also goes a long way in displaying your authority in your space, because it isn't just you saying, I'm awesome. It's other people saying, he or she is awesome. The last thing is organic search. And again, that's kind of forgotten about when you think about outreach, because you think of it as like, okay, people come through social, people come from the Huffington Post example, like I mentioned before. But these kind of social signals or these links, they have a good impact, some now and some more so in the future, particularly social more so in the future. But they have an impact on how your site ranks in search, which is very key. One of the things that's really awesome when it comes to doing outreach is not only seeing the peak in the mountain when you're at the top of your outreach, but also how after it starts to come down, your baseline is much higher than it was. This way. Your baseline was much higher than it was before. And that's a really important long-term gain, and that's something that's going to come out of it. And lastly, this is placement that money can't buy. People have so many different things. There are Mozilla, there's Chrome, there's all these different plugins for your internet browsers to turn ads off because people hate them. Not only that, but we're all ad blind at this point too. When you look at a newspaper, who gets jazzed up about seeing an ad? You, right at the front? Cool, come on up, tell me about that ad, because it's not that often, But that's the thing that you're avoiding, because you're really getting in the zone where people are paying attention, and because of those recommendations from people, it kind of paves the way for you more than anything else. So, I talked a little bit about outreach, and so what I want to do is try to break it down. There's 4 really key parts, and all of these work together, and all of them are very crucial. So the first part is the research. This is not only the research for the people that you're planning to reach out to, where you want to hijack their audience, but in a nice way, obviously, but also the kind of content or the thing that you're going to produce. And that could be in the form of a really common one would be like an infographic. I'm sure you've all seen different kinds of tools and things online for calculating your body mass or your insurance rates, things like that. Those kind of tools, those things, they help, they're unique enough that you can get links, get mentions, get references for that. And the research side of this really plays into the next 3 things, and it's very, very important. your thing. So when it comes to Annie, she's a pro photographer. So what is she doing right here but taking a picture of this stud, this Lego figure dude, and that's her thing. So your thing really comes down to the tools. It could be resource articles, it could be visuals in the form of video, it could also be photographs. Trying to find that thing, and more specifically, your one thing that you plan to reach out about, that you plan to get people hyped and jazzed about, and you plan to get people back to your site because of. So number 3 is relevancy factors, and this is very crucial too. I'm sure that we've all gotten irrelevant, whether it be tweets or emails from people that don't have anything to do with whatever it is your blog or your site or your passions are about. And it's so crucial for a success factor and making sure that, again, you're providing this value. It's a two-way exchange. That what you're doing is relevant to the person you're reaching out to, so the author or the site owner, but also to the audience that they reach out to. And it goes for different, and those things sound similar, and sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not either. So if you think of, if you're in like an industry that's more hobby focused, like you do RC cars, you get those 60-mile-an-hour really cool RC cars, and you reach out to an author who has a great audience, a lot of people are really engaged. So one of the things with him, in this example, is he only does this on the weekends, and he works a full-time job. So one of the relevancy factors for him is, I'm trying to help you produce great content and share great things with your community, and you don't necessarily have the time to do it yourself. So this is how I feel I can help. Now, the same thing goes with relevancy factors as far as an audience is concerned. There's things like being timely, obviously being involved in the niche that you're working in. Those kind of things are super crucial. And lastly, the ask. Don't be this guy on the phone calling up this guy on the right who wants to poke himself in the eye with a can. Your ask is so important. Asking people in the right way, in a respectful manner. And not only that, but making sure that you're not getting in that trap of forming, like using just a contact form. Do your research, find people on social platforms, see where they're active. That's how you can greatly increase your success rate of just getting a response, and that's 2/3 of the battle. When you think about it, how many times have you sent a message to just a contact form and never heard anything again? And this is especially important when you think about larger entities, not single blogger sites like that hobby site that I mentioned, but real big players in your industry, in your space, or in general. So if you think about something like the Huffington Post or USA Today, you don't need to think about reaching out to USA Today or the Huffington Post. What you need to think about is reaching out to Steve, who happens to cover all the electronic copies that are in there. It makes it much more easier for you to carve out the noise, and not only that, but it makes your ask much more relevant. And again, that's the important part of this relevancy and this value transfer. So, what ended up happening to Annie after all this was said and done? She listened to this speech, she's hanging back there, she's just real tiny, no one can see her. She's up with that whole thing back there. Just kidding, don't look. So what happened? More people found her. More people found her site. And were driven there not only through search, but through social, and she started to gain awareness from people. And again, like I alluded to before, it's not just that one-term, short-term landslide of traffic. That's obviously what you'll get for great placement, but one of the other things too that's really forgotten about is that long-term boost that you're going to get to what's I refer to as like your baseline. So if you're hovering around 20, 40 views on average a day, or even less, hopefully what happens afterwards, and after that outreach campaign, is you're going to find that your baseline is going to move from 20 to 40, maybe to 40 or 60, or 60 to 80. And that bump is crucial, because that essentially could double your traffic on an ongoing, reoccurring basis. And if you can stack these outreach, these sprints, if you will, these marketing sprints, whatever you want to refer to it as, is what we are. If you can stack that stuff, then over time you can inevitably build your baseline so it's higher and higher and higher and higher. And your influence and your audience size grows and grows and grows. And one of the things too that it definitely goes without saying is making sure that what you're producing is valuable. And it's not just trying to push the same kind of garbage onto someone that everyone's seen before. The same thing goes as far as thinking about like the ask, where how many times have you gotten that like, "Dear sir or madam, I hope you enjoy this thing I'm sending. Insert like URL," and that's it. That's the only relevant thing that matches to me. And it just doesn't work. So, what else happened to her? Ka-chow! Oprah. Yeah, that one even tweeted about her, and that's how she started to spread her influence. And that's also adds into that social proof factor as well. So thanks everyone. Like I mentioned before, the slide deck and also some additional resources, additional information along those lines are going to be on. They're already up. Check it right now. I'm going to test. dogoodhair.com and /NEPA BlogCon. Some photo credits too. So does anyone have any questions for either myself or Dale? So either way, one of the things that's important to consider is obviously these SEO kind of factors are going to be changed. They always do. In the last 2 weeks, there's been some really big curveballs. A lot of keywords, if it hasn't happened to you already, will in the next week or month. Not provided is a big thing as far as keywords are concerned, so you're not going to see what keywords are driving traffic to your site. The other thing too is maybe what you were referencing is Hummingbird. That's the recent update of what they dubbed it. And what that plans to do is focus more on, it's looking more semantically at what people are searching for. So it doesn't just think of like house review. There's a lot of different variables in there. So the house could be service from home, all those different factors and how they work. And not only that, but the same thing goes for review. It's trying to look more, not just for keyword density, but it's trying to look more for relevance and real relevance to it. So how does that research part affect this, or how does this? So either way, whether you're looking at building links or social authority, those things positively impact search. And that's going to be forever. And I would go on, I would say that. Links currently have been one of the biggest factors in driving, and one of the most forgotten when it comes to SEO. People think about doing things on their site. People think about that sort of stuff in some keywords, that kind of things. But links are really one of the biggest factors in happening for years as far as how Google can perceive the domain for its authority. More particularly relevant links, and more particularly than that, authoritative links. So with that being said, social on the other side of the coin is beginning to show influence, and it depends on who you ask for where it's at in the process. But social is also, I feel, and either way, social is going to be a driving factor in search. Even if you just want to focus solely on personalization and how that's affecting search. Google is beginning to show more and more search results that say, your friend likes this, or X so-and-so from your Google Plus account is down with this,
Yeah, as you were saying with social, and definitely if you're not in at the ground level with Google Plus already, definitely get involved with that. Start setting up your profile. Start making sure that all of your links, because I've seen it where they're weighing results in Google Plus higher than, for example, Facebook and for Twitter and things like that. So, it's their animal. They want to run with it. That's how they do it. They want to have more people using Google Plus, and a lot of if they see that your friends and your social networks are all using Google Plus as well, then they're going to filter to make sure that hits are coming through there. So definitely work on that if you haven't done so already.
And also, one last thing too, you mentioned the research side of stuff. So, like I mentioned in the presentation, there's research on both ends of it. Not only the content that you plan to produce, but also in the audience. And really it's important when you're thinking about those things, there's a lot of great tools out there that you can use to make this process much, much easier, faster, more efficient for yourself. Some of those would include for looking in terms of influencers and audience effect. You could think of things like social search type of engines. So there's one called Topsy, and there's another one called Follower Wonk. And Follower Wonk particularly is pretty beneficial because it shows you influencers that are based on certain keywords. It'll show you their audience size, not only that, but the kinds of interaction they have. So that's super key. And again, with those social kind of search engines, what you can do is you can also see what kinds of content have performed well, and that's where Topsy comes in. You can look and see that in your space, tons and tons of people have shared content about a space or something. And then you can look to make content around it the same way. And also with that, if you look in industries outside of your own, you can look for, there are a lot of different, I don't want to say template, but there's a lot of different roadmaps, if you will, for different post styles and information that can be applied regardless of what industry you're in. So some of the most popular ones would include, obviously we've all read or seen at least one kind of top 10 review, or this versus that. You've also seen like visual depictions of things, whether it's in the form of like a longer infographic, a timeline, using video. Those kind of things, even if they worked in another space, there's a lot of transferableness right there. Does that answer your question? Cool. Any questions?
Yeah, so aside from a brand perspective, if you're launching a new brand and you want to throw a blog on there just to increase web traffic, what would be like a synopsis of a few key points in terms of like how does that blog have what, aside from like relevant, obviously you want to value the content, but aside from that, like what are some takeaways in establishing a blog for a brand in terms of driving?
That's a great question. So some of it comes down, and at the core of it really boils down to a good amount of research. Again, you touched on it, making sure it's relevant, and that's awesome. It's really cool and important to see that what you're doing is, again, adding value to people. So think about it in a way of, okay, what kind of search terms, what are people looking for? And not not only that, but you're thinking about it in terms of like a blog that's going to try to drive revenue. Think about it in terms of what keywords, or not necessarily even what keywords, but what phrases people are searching for and how you want to target them. And not only that, but where that's at in your funnel, your conversion funnel. So thinking of it for like that sales funnel. So at the top of the funnel, we have someone searching television. And so those kind of things, you really don't know if they're searching to buy a TV or they watched a TV or something. If you search a little lower, you'll see television reviews, a Vizio versus Sony, you know. So it's important to make sure that the words that you're going after, these phrases, this information, is also can convert for you or help your business grow in that regard. So that's super duper crucial, and one thing that a lot of people forget about. It's very easy to get blinded by the raw numbers. Like, oh, 60,000 people search for television. Like, let's get that. But that doesn't really mean anything if you are a TV repair person, you know, for just an example. The other thing too, as far as the content itself, making sure that what you're delivering in your blog, you have some diversity. That could be in a little bit in the subject matter, so making sure that you're not only talking about what it is you're into, but also relevant sub-areas that kind of overlap. We sell socks, so we're going to talk about some shoes too, you know, and some really cool shoes. The other thing too is really making sure that, again, along that like diversity line, making sure that you're not just doing like straight 400 to 500 word posts, nothing to them in that. Visuals really help. Showing information in ways that people can process it, with visual processors. That sort of stuff is so crucial. You know, there's some diversity with the content that you're providing, but it also goes a long way into getting people interested in what you're talking about. So trying to show things in a different manner than everyone else is doing, also trying to overdo what's out there already. If the top things, you know, the good thing you can do is it's very easy to do competitive research. You can search for the information and the things you're going after, and you can see what's ranking and what's doing well, and with some of those other tools that I mentioned, like top 2 follow-up, you can see what's performing well for people. So if something performed well and you can do it even better, well then that sounds like a great way to hedge your risk of this thing falling flat. And because of that, that's how you can constantly try to get those pieces and get them, you know, moving forward and increasing that baseline. Lastly, when it comes to setting up a blog, one of the things is people sometimes and oftentimes spend like 90% of their time creating the copy and the content for that site, which is dope. Everyone should create awesome stuff. And if you don't know by now, that's one of the cornerstones for what I'm talking about. But on the flip side of it, a lot of people, and especially if you don't have a decent sized audience in the tune of at least 100, 200 uniques a day, something of substantial weight that those people can share your content for you, it's really important to think about this outreach process. Publishing the best blog post in the world when your blog is starting off, if you have no visitors, no traction, isn't going to help. You need to find ways to get that great content in front of people who then can help you get mind share in front of their audience. And that doesn't just mean guest posting. That means, you know, reaching out to these people. One of the things that I tried to avoid in this presentation was guest posting, because I'm sure every single one of you who blogs or writes has heard about guest posting. And I love it. It's a great tactic for gaining links and getting authority. But the problem with it is it's just trading one link for one post. When I think if you hold something of great value on your own site, what you can actually do is you can use that one valuable piece to transition into multiple links, and it helps make this process of gaining authority, building influence, it helps make it much more scalable, which is very important because all of us have a limited amount of time. Is that a pretty good for you? Cool.
I was just going to mention, as far as doing research, we used to talk a lot about the long tail, which is basically, as you said, you know, televisions. It's a great keyword. A lot of people are looking for that. But you've also got to look at how many other people are writing about it. So you're going to look at the scale up here of televisions. It's pretty high. So you're thinking, I'm going to go for this keyword. No, you want to go down to where this keyword is. You want to focus on maybe a specific brand of television or a specific topic that relates to televisions. And if you can get, it turns out there's a lot more people in this area than there are in this area. You know, so I'm drawing a graph here that basically goes from the most searched keywords to the least searched keywords. So if you can figure out how to get these people, you're going to get a lot more of them than you are of these people, because you have a lot more competition up here. You know, you're writing about televisions or video games, or what you want to be writing about is indie games or indie PC games or indie iOS games. You know, if you can get those niches, if you can get those lesser search terms, and especially building a community around them, talk to like the developers or the brands or the people that sell them or the people that talk about them or the people that write about them. Get those people, get them involved, and you'll start reaping much more increased results.
Absolutely. And to kind of touch on what you mentioned too, as far as competition is concerned, there are really good examples on the side from actually doing consulting work with businesses. They also, not so much now, but in the past I built affiliate sites. So this research and seeing how competitive it is so crucial. And one key example that always pops out in my head is for a long time when all those Kindles came out, I had an affiliate site about Kindle cases and covers. And it sounds really lame, it kind of was, so I don't do it anymore. But it was also very lucrative as far as money was concerned, because they were just coming out. And keyword like, it doesn't sound much of a difference between Kindle cover and Kindle case, but the amount of people who search for it and the competition is incredible. It was so different. And the best part was the word that had more to the tune of like 10,000 extra searches per month, the estimate, was less competitive. Because of that, I was able to rank for that, just because of that little bit of research. And through that, I mean, peak months on a website that literally did Kindle cover reviews was able to net me closely like $2,000. So it's very feasible, and the competition, looking at that is so crucial.
You'll find that on the internet, tomato and tomato are very, very different things. It's not just about what I say versus what you say. It's our language and how we use it. So, and another thing is when you're doing your keyword searches, make sure you pay attention to the phrases that people use. Because some people will search for web hosting, where some people will search for web servers. It's all in the nuance. And Google is becoming more and more adept at looking at real word phrasing and how we use language to communicate. They're doing it, they say, because they want to increase, so you can talk to your phone and be like, hey, how do I find, Joe's shoe store or whatever. But it's also about search, because they know people are looking for things like, where can I find a church in my neighborhood, or where can I find a good place to eat. People will actually search for things like that, like really general and broad, ridiculous things, like, where can I find a good place to eat? And Google is doing things with local and results, where it will look up where you are on your phone. For example, if you're in Swissville, Pennsylvania, it knows already to limit your results to places to eat in Swissville, Pennsylvania.
Your turn.
kind of not related to what you were saying, but I'm hearing a lot about e-commerce and stuff. I want to help people who don't have things to sell. Like I would want to start a blog about, I don't have anything to sell. I have something to say, but not something to sell.
Right.
How do you go about, tips?
You're in the best place for that. Networking, meeting people, talking to people, trading links, building a community. If you have something to say and you think there's a lot of people that need to hear it, you need to talk to as many people as you can. This is the best place to do that for this area.
Also, too, to get to your point, a lot of what I was focused on wasn't based on trying to sell people anything. A lot of those, the examples were valuable pieces of information that are worth sharing. That's even easier when you don't have things to sell, because then it's not so much of a double motive, or so it seems. In e-com, looking at it from their side, sometimes what people do who are in that kind of e-com, where they sell like a product or something, it's very easy to try to focus on pushing that product, pushing that sellable asset. And a lot of times it's easy to fall flat, because then it seems too advertising, too sketchy as far as that's concerned. So really, by not selling anything, or at least not initially selling anything, maybe in the future you can work on developing an ebook, some kind of associated product, you can do consulting or coaching based on whatever you're into. Kind of have a better advantage just by starting a blog that isn't trying to sell anything off of that. But when you are starting from scratch, it's really important to try to reach out either in real life in terms like this, or digitally to people that you're interested in, that you have some kind of connection with too.
Go on Twitter and do like keyword searches for stuff that's related to you. I know from my gaming journalism days, I would search for games and topics related to that were important to me. So, and I find, for example, I found a lot of other people who are in the same situation as I am. They're just one person with a blog, and they have something to say. So you get involved with those people. You start tweeting your links to them. You start, giving them feedback, and then they give you feedback. And basically, you just keep doing that over and over again. That's basically using social media as a strategy towards building more readership. So go on Facebook, go on Twitter, go on Google+, and just look for those hashtags. Look for those topics that are relevant to you, and start building a community with those people. Start, not necessarily, like you said earlier, guest posts, things like that. Make sure you're talking to other people as much as you can, and spreading that link around so that they know who you are and what you do. And like I said, earlier, the whole thing with domains is, fashionchick.com. She's all about fashion. You know that, and she's a woman because it's in her domain name. So hopefully you picked a relevant domain name to your blog or your niche. But basically, number one is communicate with as many people as you can. Thank you very much.
Do you think we briefly compare and contrast some of the different domain registrars or web hosts out there? What are the things
discount if you register multiple years, and keep that in mind when you're registering a domain name. Google sees how long you've registered your domain name for. So a domain name that has been registered for 5 years, for example, is going to rank a little bit higher because Google thinks, oh, this person's going to stick around. I better, give them a little more Google juice, basically. If you're looking to switch hosting, go with a company that's going to give you great customer support. Okay, so if your website goes down at 3 in the morning and you call GoDaddy and they're going to redirect you to like some third world country that they're like, hi, my name's Joel, how can I help you? That's not going to help you out. You need a company who's going to respond as soon as they can and get your blog back up and running. What's that? Okay.
One of the other things too when it comes to thinking about domain registrars from that standpoint is Joey said on customer service. There's a lot of great domain providers, hosting providers. It's internet. Most do both because there's money involved. What you'll find is there's live chat features like that where you can literally get a hold of people all the time. My personal experience, I have hosting accounts with 2 different hosting providers. I have hosting accounts with GoDaddy, or excuse me, not with GoDaddy. Their hosting stinks. Don't get their hosting. I have Bluehost, which one of the things that they do is if you sign up for a year, they give you your domain for free. It's really nice. People love it. But the thing with that is you have to pay annually. Now, on the flip side of the coin, I also have HostGator, which I pay for monthly. And that was when I first got started out because it was awesome. I could pay $10 a month. It took it right out of my PayPal, sweet, and then it was cool because I didn't have $100 to drop in the first clip. So that's an important part of it too. I would suggest doing a little bit of deeper research as far as what their uptimes are, how frequently, looking at frequent instances either through social search or through Google search, and trying to look for times when they've had downtime. If so, how do they respond? A great example is very recently, in the last maybe 2-3 months, Bluehost, and there's 3 large hosting providers that are all owned by the same company. It's like Bluehost, HostGator, and I think they have someone else too.
GoDaddy owns like all of them.
So they had downtime. And one of the cool parts was just comparing the difference between HostGator and Bluehost. Bluehost was very active on social platforms, which if you're not on social platforms, it doesn't matter. But for me, I am. So that was very crucial to see them responding to people in real time and getting that information out there. Not only that, but you can also go a long way to show how fast they're really looking to get these things done. And that's only been the first time that I've had both of those host providers, which is probably like 3 or 4 years on HostGator, and then probably like 2 or 3 on Bluehost. And that's the first time that there's been ever any major downtime like that, But it's really important to try to look at their track record and also see how they respond to it too. Any more questions? Does that do it?
How many people in here have a blog, are blogging currently? Okay, that's good. And do you have your own domain name? And who are you on WordPress.com? Are you on like Tumblr, Twitter? What are you hosting through?
I'm on
Bluehost. Good job. Good job. Who's kidding? Good job, Jeff. What attracted you to having your own host versus going with a free solution? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know, I just want my own domain name, I wanted the customization, I wanted the backing, having my own emails, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, the ability to customize because there's less things you can do on the .com than you can do with your.
Yeah, just emphasizing again why it's important. These people get it. For the people who maybe don't get it yet, that is definitely something to consider. It seems like a lot of money, especially if you're not making money. Maybe this is just your hobby and you don't really want to invest a whole lot of money into it. But that's definitely something to consider down the road. If you're even sort of thinking about expanding someday, do it now. Get it out of the way as fast as possible. Get your domain name registered. Make sure people know you by your domain name. Oh, I also wanted to mention, I forgot to include this in my presentation, why it's important to register your name .com and .org and .net is because imagine you own a donut shop and somebody across the street opens a donut shop with the same exact name as you. In the real world, that's not really feasible, but on the internet, it totally is. Your domain .com is your site, but somebody else came along and registered your name .net. So a lot of people are going to go there and they're going to get confused, or they're going to be doing nasty things. They're going to be including like phishing, which is basically they provide provide like a login so that you click on, you know, you log in, you think you're logging into the .com, but you're logging into the .org, and now they have your information. You know, so it's really important, especially if you're offering services, to make sure that you register as many of those top-level domains as possible. Another thing to look at as far as branding is to look out for people who will register like yournamesucks.com or yournameisascam.com. You know, that happens a lot. Google has, I don't know how many different spellings of google.com. Look up GOOGLE.com. It's registered by them because they know people will look for that. And they want to make sure they own that brand. That is so important to make sure that your name is your name.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Everybody stopping in.
Thank you.